Hello, good morning. My name is Doug Dawson, and I am the managing director and founder of Leg Up Solutions. Leg Up Solutions is an education and advisory firm focused on helping organizations develop organizational excellence by tapping into the latent talent of the workforce. One of the ways that we do that is we help organizations to deploy the Shingo model for organizational excellence within their organizations. So that's pretty exciting, but I'm really excited for a couple of things today. Number one, today we're now streaming on YouTube through our YouTube channel, and we're pretty excited about that. So if you want to go back and take a look at um, today's live stream, you can do that either on LinkedIn through LinkedIn Live, or you can go to YouTube. We're pretty excited about today's live stream. Number one, we're wrapping up our research on Leave No Trace leadership, and we're going to be having some thought leaders do some analysis of our findings and provide comment on that, which will go into our 2022 Leave No Trace Leadership Report. So that'll be coming out later this year, probably in quarter 2. The other thing that we're kind of excited about is that we're actually presenting at the Shingo webinar next week on Tuesday, I believe it is, on Leave No Trace Leadership. So if you're interested in seeing the webinar, what Leave No Trace Leadership is all about, go to the Shingo Institute website at shingo.org and click on events, or you can go to the Shingo Institute page on LinkedIn, and you can find the event there as well. I've also sent some invitations out and a general broadcast. So anyway, we're excited about that because that will be the culmination of our research. We're hoping to get a few more people to provide some input into the research, and then we're going to start digging into the data, and that's exciting. What I want to talk to you about today, though, really is key, and that's the main reason that you should be here, and that's on the power of the Gemba. And I watched last week a documentary called Citizen Jane: Battle for the City. And there was a kind of a compare and contrast piece about the two different approaches to solving some of the problems within the less affluent areas of New York City back in the 50s. And so the one style was driven by a gentleman by the name of Robert Moses. He's been vilified for a number of reasons, but he's also somewhat of a visionary. But one of the challenges that he had was trying to change the city without really understanding what changes should take place. And he enlisted the help of a lot of architects that were really bought into kind of the postmodernistic style of architecture. And what they developed was eventually called the projects. And that was replicated through a number of cities throughout the United States and even in some other countries. But the idea is to get people together where they were all close to one another. But the problem with that was that they had made some assumptions without validating those assumptions on what people would do in these densely populated locations. And what people did was follow human behavior, which was not at all what those assumptions indicated. And as a matter of fact, Robert Moses is reputed to have said when this took place was that people are stupid. So his vantage point was kind of a high-level vantage point, a vantage point from an office high above everything else, a vantage point from aerial photographs, skyscraper views, and even from airplanes that he rode in. But his view was largely from the top. I worked for a company once that called this MBD, management by desk, and it was not a good behavior for managers to be engaged in management by desk. Then the contrasting uh, situation in the video was Jane Jacobs, and she was kind of like she was for the rights of the people, a bit of a progressive, I would say. But more than that, she was interested in what made communities tick. And so she went to the Gemba. Now, she didn't know that she was going to the Gemba, but as I went through the documentary, I could see very clearly that she was going to the Gemba, and she started identifying patterns, which is what we do at the Gemba. Started identifying patterns of behavior and trying to ascertain what those behaviors were, that were desired behaviors, and what made these communities click. And what she found out is that it was a series of systems that were interconnected. So we talk about that in the Shingo workshops, particularly the systems design workshop, where an organization has a number of systems that are interconnected and interdependent. And that's what she recognized. And so what happened with Robert Moses' plan is he didn't have any understanding or even knowledge of these systems. So he had no regard for them. And he basically stripped those systems and tried to replicate them in these projects. And the result was that it was a pretty dismal failure. And throughout the United States now, St. Louis, Chicago, obviously New York City, and other areas, these projects have been demolished, and they're trying to reinvigorate the community feel by replacing these projects with structures that are more sensitive to community. That made me think about the Gemba. And I've been thinking about the Gemba over my career as more of where work is getting done. But I realized that the Gemba is truly what Ritsuo Shingo says. So Ritsuo Shingo is the son of Shigeo Shingo, for whom the Shingo Institute was named, and the Shingo Prize as well. Ritsuo Shingo says that the Gemba, the literal translation of the Gemba, is the place where the thing is happening. Now, I've always assumed that thing to be work, but what could that thing be? Now, my wife watched the video with me, and we were talking about the Gemba when it was over. And I said, she was at the Gemba. She didn't know that she was at the Gemba, but she was at the Gemba. And we started talking about what the Gemba was. And my wife said, well, you know what? I'm always at a Gemba. She said, I had to wait in the doctor's office the other day, and it would have been nice for somebody to come to the Gemba and see what was not happening, because there were a lot of frustrated people at the Gemba waiting for something to happen. And that made me think about the 10th guiding principle of the Shingo model: create value for the customer. So all this is interconnected. And if you think about it, consider our current political environment. There's a lot of people making assumptions about what's happening at the Gemba, but nobody's willing to cross the line, take that step, and go to the Gemba and see, go to the place where the thing is happening and see and try and understand. Ritsuo Shingo talks about this also. He says, when you go to the Gemba, the idea to go to the Gemba isn't to preach. It isn't to pontificate. It's not to take a stand. What he says when you go to the Gemba is that you should have big ears. You should have big eyes. You should have a small mouth. And so that's the power of the Gemba. And you can learn what is going on. And by learning what is going on, you can find what you can do to make things better. You can even find, like Jane Jacobs did, you can find that people are resourceful, and they'll find their own way of solving problems. They don't need somebody sitting in a high tower to tell them how to solve the problems without their actually having been to the Gemba and understanding. Jane said these people are resourceful and they will find their own solutions to the problems that they face. And that's the power of the Gemba. When we take a look at organizations, we go to organizations on study tours or when they host workshops or whatever the case may be. When we're at the Gemba, organizations that are mature in their journey of excellence have helped their people to be as resourceful as possible. The folks in the C-suite understand that the folks on the floor know what the problems are and probably know better how to solve those problems than anybody else. And because they're resourceful, most of the time those ideas for solving the problems don't require a high degree of capital. They don't require big projects that hopefully bring step changes. And that's the power of the Gemba. The power of the Gemba is not only good for enterprise, it's not only good for business, but it's good for our social environment. It's good for our political environment. It's good for my wife's doctor's office. It's good for everything. So if we can get people thinking more about where the Gemba actually is and going to the Gemba with big eyes, big ears, and a small mouth, then maybe things will change. And I may be a bit idealistic with that in mind, but I'm an idealistic person and I have an eternal optimism about the ability of people to do the right thing when given the chance. Somebody once said in lean circles, so it's a common lean comment, that you should make it easier to do the right thing than it is to do the wrong thing. And going to the Gemba is the right thing for sure. Anyway, thank you. That's all for today. We've got a lot of sunshine. It's shining in here on me, and I'm anxious to get out in that sunshine. We've had an ice storm the last 24 hours, and I want to bask in that sunshine. But I want to remind you that we're live right now. You can view this later on LinkedIn or on YouTube. In addition to that, on Tuesday next week, I will be delivering a webinar on Leave No Trace leadership. I'm excited about that. Feel free to join me there and have a great weekend and a great journey of excellence. See you later.